In today's lesson, toda kuita methods of separating metallic waste. So this is an application yatinoita under the topic separation. When you hear about metallic waste, what comes to mind? Kana tichiconsider separation techniques. It must be magnetism, because takadefine magnetism as the separation of non-magnetic material. An example would be plastic, wood, and magnetic material. An example would be metals like iron. But you should also know that we have magnetic metallic material. We also have non-magnetic metallic material. And an example of non-magnetic metallic material is aluminum, inoshandiswa kugadzira makeni atinozomwira coke yedu kana fanta yedu. Saka looking at this particular topic, where should we start? Saka toda kutanga with just a quick revision. What do we mean by metallic material? Saka metallic waste refers to discarded materials that contain metals. And an example is iron, aluminium, copper, zinc, and steel. These wastes come from. So before we go to where the waste comes from, our first note is going to be metallic waste are materials that contain metals. And an example panapa is iron, aluminum, kana kuti aluminium actually, copper, zinc, and steel. And so if we have waste, but the waste contains metallic substances, then that is called metallic waste. But zvandataura apa should be a precursor to what you should actually know, because metallic waste hazvireve kuti kana chikanzi chinhu chiri metallic chatova magnetic. Being magnetic is a separate physical characteristic. Zvekuti we have metallic material, cannot metallic substances which are non-magnetic. And by example yandapapa, a clear example of a non-magnetic metallic material is aluminum. Kana kuti aluminium, forgive me for that. So now let us look at where these wastes come from. So these wastes come from domestic waste, that is cans or foil, industrial waste, scrap material, machine parts, for example, vehicles and appliances. So let us put it down. Metallic waste, where do we find it? Where do we get it from? Metallic waste comes from domestic waste. Tikavhura tin redu rebeans, tobva tarasa tin racho. That is domestic metallic waste. For example, cans or foil. The other place where we have metallic waste coming from is industrial, and I think this is actually major. Industrial waste. And from industrial waste we are talking about scrap yards. Saka tine scrap metal. Of course we have also scrap metal which comes from households, which comes from domestic use. Saka kune vanhu vanofamba vachinonga tusimbi tunonge turi mudzimba tusingachadiwe kuti vaendese kumajunkyard for reprocessing and recycling. But we have most of scrap metal, kana kuti scrap metallic waste, coming from industries. That's industrial waste. And we can also talk about machine parts. Then we can also have metallic waste coming from vehicles and appliances. We can also have such a situation. So why is it important to be able to separate metallic waste? Hatisati tatombopinda mu the method kana kuti separation technique we are going to employ. We are now much more vexed, and much more interested and focused on the reasons of wanting to separate metallic waste. So the main reason why we have to separate metallic waste is for the sake of recycling. And why should we recycle? Because recycling is a form of reusing something, kana kuti redefining something for reuse. Why should we recycle metallic waste? We all know that metals, they are mined. And iron, aluminum, I keep on getting this wrong, copper, zinc, steel, aluminium, these are mined material. Kureva kuti we extract them from the ground through the process of mining. And everything that is mined, zoreva kuti it is non-renewable, in the sense kana tikatomina iron from a certain iron ore, kuti pazogadzirwa kana kuti pazova neimwe iron ore from that, it can actually take millennium. Mapaona, it take centuries and centuries of years. Saka mined material we extract from the ground, they are called non-renewable as per geography and other fields of science. So if they are non-renewable, if our primary source of iron kungori kumaina, so that we are going to deplete the iron ore, we are going to deplete the ore which contains aluminium, copper, zinc, and steel. And we also know the disadvantages which come with mining. We know the disadvantages which come with the extraction of minerals from the ground. Kutanga, that affects the human resource. And most mines, they are ill managed because people want to cut costs, and that risks the people's lives who are the actual miners. There are many documented theses and stories which describe the horrors which miners come across. We are also going to destroy natural ecosystem, the geography of the place where we are mining. Kuchera mazikomba, dzimongoa futsirwe, because it's actually almost impossible and very expensive kufutsira gomba ramambochera mchida kumaina. Sarongosiwa is open cast, and that destroys the natural ecosystem, that endangers other animals, mombe dzogona wiramo and stuff. Saka there are many disadvantages which are associated with mining. Saka we try to move away from, we can also have global warming, by the way. Global warming, because during the process of mining, tichada kuzoshandisa energy, kumelta zvinhu, and all those processes of mining, of which ipapo panoitika carbon emissions, which then adversely leads to global warming. Saka there are many disadvantages which are associated with mining. Saka we want to stay away from having mining as our primary source of metals. Saka those metals which we can recycle, reuse, kuti mota yafa, yaparara, then we take the metals from it and we recast them for reuse. That will save the environment a great deal. Saka the main reason why we should be able to separate metallic waste is for the sake of recycling it. So let us put it down as a subheading. We want to talk about the importance of recycling metallic waste. What is the importance of recycling metallic waste? I think in our discussion about tabata on a lot of it, but let us double down on it. Let us put it down. So the importance of recycling metallic waste. Chekutanga ndechekuti metals are non-renewable resources. Ndochekutanga ndo reason chayo why we have to recycle. They are non-renewable resources. Non-renewable kureva kuti once mined zvoreva kutoti hapachistorina in the ground. Understand? Once we have mined the iron ore, we no longer have iron from that particular place where we have mined it. It's non-renewable. So we have a duty to preserve our non-renewable resources. So if we can reuse, cannot recycle a certain metallic waste, that would be to the betterment of the environment. The other reason is recycling saves energy and raw materials. It takes less energy. Let us take an example of heat energy. We know kuti gold has to be purified through fire. The amount of energy which is required for purifying gold, and it's actually different from the amount of energy which is then required in the case gold was recycled. Maybe this is not a good example. Let us talk about iron. Kana tichi-extract iron through the process of mining, we use much more energy than the energy which is used for recycling it. Actually, for recycling, we just have to separate iron from other metals, take that iron, put it muma blast furnaces so that it is melted, then we recast into different forms and shapes for reuse. But the process of mining iron much requires a lot of energy as compared to the process of recycling it. Saka, an advantage of recycling is in saving energy and also saving raw material. So when we talk about raw materials, your thinking shouldn't be limited to shandiswa in the process of either mining or recycling. You should also count the human resource, because we factor in the human resource when we are considering the cost of production. Saka, human effort, labor, is also counted as a raw material. Vanhu vanoshanda pakumaina iron, extracting it from the ground, vanenge vakatowanda vachidimanda more compensation because it's harder work than vanhu vanoshanda muscrapyard vachiita melt and recast iron for other uses. So we should also take that into account. Then the other reason for recycling is it reduces environmental pollution. Reduces environmental pollution. Saka, environmental pollution ties directly to global warming, because global warming is because of carbon emissions. Carbon emissions utsiwa munoona uchibuda kuma industry uya uchienda mudenga, unenge uchicontaina in large amounts carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Zvinoita deplete the ozone layer, which is like a protective sheet which protects the earth from direct ultraviolet radiation and other dangers. So that then leads to climate change, which then leads to other disasters like natural wildfires and kusanaya kwemvura, kureva kuti zvinhu hazvimeri, kwetika nzara, and many other diverse disasters. Saka, avoiding extraction from earth, totora another route, which is to recycle what we already have, is going to reduce environmental pollution. Saka pana ndichitsanangura environmental pollution in the event of carbon emissions, we also have environmental pollution back to destroy the natural ecosystem. Mapaona. Ndoda kupa an example, but it's not directly tied to what we are learning now. But in the Amazon, kune vanhu vanochengeta mombe dzinozoitwa beef inodyiwa with a very large population in the Americas. They actually burn trees to create like plain fields of grazing land. Saka kupisa miti ikoko manje, adversely, it's destroying the natural ecosystem. Mapaona. And destroying the natural ecosystem, we are destroying animals which are important to ecosystem and to life, because most of the carbon dioxide we breathe in comes from trees. You get what I mean? Saka there's a ripple effect, a chain reaction inoitika when we take mining as a primary source of metals instead of recycling zvatinge tinazvo. Tikangoti chisingachashandi torasa, then kana takuda metals tomaina, that is going to lead to environmental pollution, cannot destruction of the natural ecosystem. Then we also talk about reduces cost of production, kureva kuti it's cost effective. Sezvanambotsanangura pata discuss recycling saves energy and raw materials, kuti it's cheaper to recycle than to actually extract from the ground. It requires more machinery, more labor, more time, more compensation for workers to mine out, to extract, for example, iron from the ground, as is compared to actually recycling the iron we already have. So before recycling, metals must be separated from non-metals and from each other. Saka pando pakupinda chi separation. So before recycling, metals must be separated What are they separated from? From non-metals, plastic, miti, and from each other. We are going to discuss methods of separation. Of course, magnetism is going to be a major here, but we also have other methods of separation. So let us look at methods of separation. What do we learn? Methods of separation. What are we separating? Metallic waste. So, for methods of separation, we are going to start with number 1, magnetic separation. And I think it's quite obvious why magnetic separation is a major here. Magnetic separation. This method uses a magnet to separate magnetic materials from non-magnetic materials. So, use of a magnet. And we know that for industrial use to kushandisa my electromagnets. So use of a magnet or an electromagnet to do what? To separate magnetic material, cannot magnetic metals from non-magnetic material. From non-magnetic material. Saka to separate magnetic metal. For something to be magnetic, it has to be a metal. But I have discussed earlier using aluminium as an example. But we can have a metal which is non-magnetic. Saka zvirioti chinhu chikanzi it's a metal, it has to be magnetic. Aluminium ndio inoshandiswa kugadzira macan atinozomwira ma soft drinks. Take a magnet and try to attract that to a magnet. It's non-magnetic. Saka we are separating magnetic metals from non-magnetic material. The magnetic metals, we can talk of iron. Saka, maybe let me say example of magnetic materials. Example yacho tichitaura for example iron and steel, and it and then example of non-magnetic materials, kana kuti nganditi non-magnetic metals and materials. In this case, for metals, aluminium, and materials to tarisa, in most cases plastic. Saka plastic pollution is become a problem because plastics are non-biodegradable. Maplastic aori. Saka because maplastics aori, one of the most surest way of disposing plastic is through burning. And we do not have, even if we were to burn every plastic which is no longer in use, it would be impossible to burn all of them. And that could be a disaster in the event of the carbon emissions which are associated with that. And also, kana chiti plastic pollution, hatisingotaura zvigubhu zvinoti munhu akamwa tisingongorasa then it eventually ends up in the ocean. Tiri kutaura another form of plastic pollution inonzi microplastic pollution. Like plastics are non-biodegradable, but they can be broken down. Nogona kudambura plastic tova tudiki to the extent zvekuti tunova tudiki zvekusakwanisa kuonekwa ne the naked eye. It becomes too minute, it becomes micro, and then it pollutes the water. Zvekuti kuma water treatment plants atiinawo, plastic pollution is become a problem because they have to make sure the water is purified from microplastic pollution. Mapaona kutaura kuti patinochera mvura mutape haina tuplastic twekuti tukauya mpina mudumbu redu tukatadza kubuda through excretory processes, it can actually be a problem to us. So you should research these things: plastic pollution, microplastic pollution. And the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for 2025 was awarded to 3 scientists, and their work was on how to reduce plastic pollution using a certain compound they designed. Saka, we have given examples of magnetic metals and non-magnetic metals and materials. Let us now look at how it works. Iyo method of separation, which is magnetic separation. Saka panapa takuda kutarisa the how. How does it work? Saka pano chekutanga ndechekuti waste is passed under or over a magnet. So waste is passed under or over a magnet. This is what happens. Then when waste is passed under or over a magnet, we already know kuti because of the magnetic field, magnetic metals are attracted and removed. Saka magnetic metals are attracted and removed. And it go. Non-magnetic metals remain behind because non-magnetic metals are not attracted. So reva kuti non-magnetic metals remain behind. So what is happening here? We take a magnet, we pass junkie yacho under a magnet, a very powerful, strong magnet. Zvekuti chero tiine simbi iri pasi pemazipepa nemazibhotoro nemaziplastic bottles inoattractward, like the strength of the magnet is of utmost importance. So when waste is passed under or over a magnet, magnetic metals are attracted and removed. Non-magnetic metals are then left behind. So this is how it works. What are the advantages of it? Kana tichitarisa advantages, it's simple and fast. That's an advantage. It's also relatively cheap, and especially tikada kucompare ne mining. And also talk about no chemicals required. Saka hapana machemicals anodikwa. We can also add kuti the chemical structure of metals not changed. Magnet haichange chemical structure ema metals. So the chemical structure of metals is not changed. That's also important. We are concerned with the chemical structure of metals, and we always comment about it. Then let us talk about disadvantages, which can also be called limitations. So these lists are not exhaustive. You have to do further research. So the disadvantages or limitations, they kuti one, it only works for magnetic metals. Mapaona, only works for magnetic metals. Saka kana chino chisiri magnetic, like aluminium, we cannot use magnetic separation as a method. So add your own disadvantages. Let us look at examples. So examples of usage. Tinoishandisa pachi when we are separating iron cans. So we have cans which are made from iron, from what? Plastic and paper. Saka ma iron cans ndio arichi, ndio anenge ari magnetic, and plastic and paper is non-magnetic. What else? When we are removing steel, from mixed waste. Sakaringozi junkyard, we want to remove steel from it. We can use this method of magnetic separation. But we also do have other methods which are employable. Imwe method yatinayo, funny as it may sound, is hand sorting. Kutononga chaiko tichitoseparata nemaoko. This is what? Manual separation. Saka manual separation manje ndiye kutoti employ vanhu vanenge vachitononga chisimbi vachikanda uko mapepa vachirasa. You understand? So metals are separated by hand. Metals are separated by hand. And this is based on what? Based on appearance, size, or shape. And saka the appearance of a metal, its size, its shape, we are separating things by hand. But when is this used? Tinozishandisa pakai. This is used for kutanga small scale recycling. Antika amungadi kuita matani e scrap kamchidai so. Saka small scale recycling. Chingori chitutu chidiki, then simbi mchinonga mchisauko, maybe aluminium mchisauko, steel mchisauko, mapipa mchirasa. Kana tumatanda mchidi mchirasa. Saka this is also used for what? Informal waste collection. Vanofamba vaya vachida scrap mudzimba dzevanhu vaine tungoro. this is what they largely use. Kana vazosvika kuma-scrap yards vachida kunotengesa the scrap, it is hand sorted. You get it? What are the advantages of this? Zvakanakirei? Advantage ndeyekuti it's cost effective. Ndo yekutanga. But let us say, yes, it's cost effective. Kunyangwa kuchiemploya vanhu vanozviita, but since zvichiitwa on a small scale, it's cost effective because it's done on a small scale. Then we can also talk about no machinery needed. Mangori maoko ako chete. Food for work. Saka no machinery needed. What else? Can separate different metals accurately, dependent on the knowledge of the one who's doing the separation, but let us assume so can separate different metals accurately. What are the disadvantages of this? The balance of life. No advantage exists without a corresponding disadvantage. Some disadvantages are apa. Labor intensity. It's labor intensive. Panoshandwa. Kana chitutu chikatukura, that's the more work. It's also slow. And on the case of varikuita basa racho, it's unsafe for sharp metals. Very unsafe. And we can also talk about inefficiencies, like if people do not know enough about metals, they can separate them inaccurately. So what we have discussed just now are the two main techniques used for separating metallic waste. Tatarisa magnetic separation, tikatarisa hand picking, kana kuti manual separation. In our next lesson, we are going to look at flotation, tatarisa screening, kana sieving, eddy current separation, chemical separation, ne electrolysis. So stay tuned for our next lesson. If you want extra lessons with us, get to us on +263 71 521 3310. In Zimbabwe, it's just 071 521 3310. Just like that. Thank you and take care.